the basic training supported the Corazonada, that internal heartfelt intuition in my body and my heart. But I appreciated it because I learned so much. And yeah, I just learned so much about myself. It really helps you to reconnect to yourself.
Welcome to the Transforming Trauma podcast. Transforming Trauma is presented by the Complex Trauma Training Center. I'm your host, Emily Ruth, and I'm so glad you've joined us today. And now for our interview. Our guest today is Dr. Annecy Báez, a Dominican American writer, psychotherapist, educator, and mixed media artist whose work explores the intersections of trauma, creativity, identity, and relational healing. With more than 3 decades of clinical experience, she integrates expressive arts, mindfulness, dream work, and trauma-informed approaches, including IFS and the NeuroAffective Relational Model. Annecy also teaches at Touro University Graduate School of Social Work, where she helps shape the next generation of trauma-informed clinicians. Please enjoy my conversation with Annecy Báez. All right, I am here today joined by Annecy Báez. Welcome to Transforming Trauma, Annecy.
Thank you, Emily. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
So lovely to have you. We were chatting before we pushed record, and I was like, we got to stop because we're already getting there, and I want to have this conversation. But before we get into it, I'd love to check in with you. What would you like our listeners to come away with from our time together today?
Yeah, so if there's one thing that I hope listeners take from our conversation is that every part of our journey has something to teach us. Mm-hmm. When I look at back at my own life, I can see moments that have been, difficult, moments of loss and uncertainty, but also moments of joy and periods that I felt a little disconnected and then very connected to myself. So I do, hope that our listeners can take away that every part of our journey has sometimes to teach us the uncertain moments, the certain moments, the joyful and the moments of loss and grief. When I look back at my own life also, I can see how many times I kind of lost my footing and how many times I found kind of my way back to where I needed to. And sometimes I found it through writing, through dreams, through art, through community, through creativity. And sometimes by just having the courage to be with my grief and to be in the present moment and just sitting quietly and listening to myself. So perhaps, what I hope to leave our listeners is with a little bit more compassion and trust in their journey. Mm-hmm. Even when they cannot see where they're going or something, I feel like even when we don't know, even when that chapter is still being worked out in our lives, I really feel that there's something in us that's moving towards life, towards the light, towards connection. Mm-hmm. Healing, I feel, begins when we become curious enough to listen to ourselves. So that curiosity to stay curious and to trust the journey.
Beautiful. I love that intention. And I'm already feeling so touched. And again, this is bringing in some of the pieces that we were already chatting about before we got started. But just because you already mentioned it, the journey, like appreciating the journey and the twists and the winding, paths that we all take, and appreciating all of those seeming detours, which sometimes are actually what brings us to where we need to be. So yeah, thank you for that.
And I appreciate that, Emily, because it's true. As I think of my life, and I was sharing, there've been some detours, but they've always led me to where I need to be. And I'm like, wow,
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that brings me to the first question, which really is if you could share with folks a little bit about where you are in the world and the work that you're doing.
Sure. So I live in New York City. I live upstate, but I work in New York City. And I also have a practice, as you know, part-time, but I'm a professor at a graduate school, Touro Graduate School of Social Work. When I think about how I came to this work, I really began to think that what led me to the work was my curiosity as a child. And I really feel that as a child, I wanted to understand. I didn't have words to say, I want to understand suffering and connection, but there was something that I wanted to understand around suffering. I was born in the Dominican Republic during a dictatorship, and my family migrated to New York and settled in the Bronx. And even as a child, I could feel the sorrow in the adults around me for having left everything behind. But also, I could feel their joy and their hope about being in America. And, it's very not uncommon in Latin families that they could be in the midst of grief and in the midst of appreciation and gratitude and joy. So my family, my father in particular, he saw America as this land of opportunity, a place where we could finally be ourselves, achieve whatever we wanted. He was very focused on education. So he believed that his children, that's my brother and I, would have the best education ever because we were in the best place in the whole world from his perspective. And my path, I feel, into this work came through all of that, through being an immigrant child, experiencing that sense of loss, but also an immigrant child that had lived in a family that had lived in a dictatorship. So that was part of the silence, was part of our world, and watching them. And also through community and through, Latino spirituality and through art, because literature, poetry, and story was part of my upbringing. And I feel that stories, they led me to witness humanity. Life stories brought the humanity to me, to my world. Mm-hmm. And through them, I was able to learn things. So story and poetry were like my teachers as well. Mm-hmm. So very early on, I was drawn to healing, to not just psychological healing, but spiritual and creative. And even though I love theory and I love studying theory because they help me understand. So I did train in diverse theories, and also mindfulness and Zen. But underneath all the theories that I learned, there was like one fundamental question. How do we help people come back into relationship with themselves? And so for me, healing happens through that, through connection, through presence, and through compassion, not just insight.
Mm-hmm. There's such a rich cultural experience that you're very early on, you were already connecting with these things that I think often can be so lost, at least here in, United States, at least. I think a lot of us are losing that. So you were born in the Dominican Republic, you said?
Yes.
And then at what point did you come to the States?
I was 3 years old.
You were 3. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And think of this, Emily, my brother and I were the English speakers. So we had to translate, yes. We had to be the negotiators of everything. So within the Latin culture, we had to be children, but we also had to know everything that they, we had to care for them. So it's an interesting dynamic. And my brother was so happy to be like learning English. I remember he would just practice gibberish what felt like gibberish in the bathroom.
I love that.
Yeah. And my father liked to celebrate everything. Like he got a calendar and he would celebrate even everything, even April Fool's Day. It was like everything was a celebration.
What a beautiful way to enter the planet and to be surrounded with folks that understand that the depth and just the beauty of everyday living.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You were holding these pretty big concepts for a young person. And this led you into studying. I mean, I'm curious how that winding road went for you, because you were into the arts. There was lots of things that you were interested in, but I'd love to hear a little bit of that path if you're open to sharing.
Yeah, I think that I was always interested in helping others. So I felt there was a lot of need in the Bronx, and I would volunteer everywhere that you can imagine. And when I was in college, I did study psychology, but it was interesting because I was first generation and I didn't have anybody else except my brother, and he wanted to be wealthy and a businessman. So he was in business. And I knew that I wanted to be in community, helping people. And he recommended Pace University, but it was a business school. Like he recommended a school that was a business school, and the only psych program they had was experimental. So it was research. So I was in a research experimental psychology program. And my focus was really understanding schizophrenia and creativity. And I loved understanding that because I saw a lot of what happened to people in my community around schizophrenia and substance abuse, good people, young people. And so I did my studies, but I met someone in psychological testing, a professor who was amazing. And she guided me towards what I might do in the future. I told her what I wanted to do, that I was very community and oriented. And I didn't know anything about social work at the time. I only knew psychology and education, And I met a great dean, so I double major in human relations because I wanted to understand human relations. And I double major in psych and human relations because human relations related more to what I wanted than experimental psychology.
Oh, I love that. What a cool duo.
I know. But,
Really cool.
experimental psychology was amazing, It was research, and they took us to interesting, I remember meeting Skinner. He was pretty old at the time, but we did these amazing things. But anyway, the moving into social work, when she mentioned that, it stayed in my mind. But when I graduated from college, I applied for a mental hygiene position through federal government because I wanted to work at Bronx State Hospital. and Bronx State Hospital was the main hospital dealing with schizophrenia. And I knew that if I became an aide there, I could learn, I could study. But then when I got there, everybody was like, but you have a bachelor's, you could have applied for this level 1, which is for people that have a bachelor's. And I had an incredible team where I worked. They were social workers. And also I was fascinated by the art therapist. First time that I realized art could be used to understand, I already had been studying it, but to meet somebody doing it, so it was amazing to me and to speak to them, so I knew that creativity and art and mental health, that I was on a track that was very interesting to me. But at the time, the art therapists were only in psychiatric hospitals. So the social workers were like, no, you need to get a social work job. And they guided me as I was leaving the hospital towards a job that related more to me. And I was really lucky to find a job in Brooklyn in a foster care agency in Brooklyn Heights called Little Flowers. And my focus was returning children home. And my area of study there was attachment. They were really into attachment. And I went to all these trainings on attachment and what separation does to a child. And it was fascinating. It was really amazing. And the person I was replacing was going to get his master's in social work. I couldn't believe it. I asked him questions. And he was Jewish and had studied Spanish in Mexico. So all his families were Spanish speaking. And he would always come to see how I was doing. And I would ask him about his master's. And one day he said, you must apply. You must go to Hunter. He brought me an application and I said, yeah, I'll look at it. And I did, and I applied.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And so when was that? How long ago was that?
So when I went to get my master's, I went in 82, I graduated in 84.
Okay.
And believe it or not, Emma, you're not going to believe this, but Hunter had this creative program the year I got there. And you could minor. It was like they had these minors, which was very unusual. And one of the minors was on creativity and arts and social work.
Wow.
And the other minor was in administration and supervision.
Okay.
And don't ask me why. The part of me that wanted art did not do it. She felt that administration and supervision would lead me to be a director or a supervisor, and that I needed those skills. And that people didn't really understand the arts and social work yet. Like some idea that, and I always thought about that choice that I made, but believe it or not, by the time I was 28, I was a director of a trauma center in Yonkers, Andrews Children's Home. And I was a supervisor.
Sounds like it was an important choice point for you. Wow.
Yeah, those choices. But the arts always stayed with me. So even if I couldn't be in the minor, I kept on studying the arts as one can use them in practice. And the interesting thing about working with children was that the language of children is play and art.
Mm-hmm.
So it became part of my whole entire life there in terms of the ways that I engaged children that had trauma histories. And then I took this incredible course, this workshop on vicarious traumatization or secondary trauma. And it was so helpful in terms of what I needed to do for myself in terms of embracing, the arts for my own self-care.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
At what point did you continue to further your study? Because you went on.
Yeah. I mean, while I was at Andrus working with children, I was really drawn to their incredible resilience and the ways that they had survived. And first, I thought I was going to be a psychoanalyst. So I was going to Karen Horney Psychoanalytic Institute, both for training and therapy.
Interesting.
And then I had to really pause and decide to, instead of staying in the psychoanalytic training, to go into the doctoral program at NYU. And so my dissertation was on resilience in the children that I met. But I didn't leave right away. I stayed like 5 more years. It wasn't like PhD and I'm gone. No.
Yeah.
I got my PhD and
around.
I stayed there for a while. And then I became a professor. And then I kind of stayed within that area of teaching and then private practice.
And in your private practice at that point, who were you working with mostly? Were you working with kids?
At Andrus, I was working with children. The children that came to Andrus were sent by court ages 4 to 10 if they had had a sexual trauma. Mostly was sexual trauma, but there were children with physical abuse, neglect. But no, we were a diagnostic center. We got children that nobody understood or knew what to do. Some children may have been kidnapped. Some children may have been sexually assaulted. So like the diagnostic center was before a child could go home or something was happening in a foster home like that. And, I learned a lot about residential and separation. And it was interesting because I'm in residential, but I'm hoping that children have a home. I felt a home was very important. And we worked a lot with therapeutic foster homes to help the children. It was in Jewish Board that I met the most amazing therapist that wanted to educate the community around sexual abuse. And so the community was primarily Spanish speaking. So she wanted me to translate for her and to translate documents and to learn how to educate others on sexual trauma. So I went with her everywhere. Wow. So by the time I left Jewish Board, I had a lot of training with her on sexual trauma. And so it was just like meant to be. Like I went from Jewish Board, there was a point where I worked at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. They had a Hispanic clinic. And so there I was working primarily with adults and employee assistance program. Like I was divided between employees and adults from the community. And for me, being at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital after Jewish Board was like returning home because I worked with a lot of people that had issues, but they also believed in spiritism or santeria. And I needed to learn how to merge my own practice with their understanding of the cultural beliefs that come with, spiritism and santeria. So that was really amazing because I had to go back to my elders and learn more because in my country, there's like a mixture of Catholicism with spiritual and indigenous beliefs and Yoruba tradition. And they're so blended that you don't even realize it until somebody else kind of calls you out that what you're practicing is not totally Catholicism, and they call it the mysteries, los misterios. And you don't even call it that. You just practice, the tradition, you don't call it anything. And so I learned a lot about my culture just by being there. And at the time I was married and my husband was so interested in what I was doing. And we wrote an article actually about the spectrum of belief in the Latino community. And because we were interested in continuing that education. And, and Emily, believe it or not, but I met my husband at Hunter.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yes.
All the things are kind of intersecting.
Yeah, he was a
Okay.
social worker too.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
he's my late husband. He passed
mhm,
away, but
mhm.
we wrote that article together, and it was really exciting because one of my uncles is a psychiatrist, and he's in Puerto Rico working in a psychiatric hospital, and he sees this article that comes out in some psychiatric journal. And he was so excited.
That's so
for me.
great. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's all these different ways that you have your hands in the work
Yeah.
and kind of different flavors of and exposure to all these different populations and work. So from there, I'm sure there's even more, but I'm curious what brought you to NARM. Like, how did you hear about NARM? What drew you to it?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I just mentioned my husband. So my husband passed away in 2011, and it was in 2013 that I bought Healing Developmental Trauma. I won't forget it because I was already like immersed in the trauma field, as you know, but NARM felt different. I read the book and I become part of the NARM inner circle because I wanted to learn more, but I wasn't ready to train because I was doing something that I wanted to continue doing. And what struck me as I started to study NARM was this shift from how do we adapt to survive? Like there was such compassion to me and such respect in that question and in NARM. And also that it recognized our symptoms and our patterns as creative adaptations that helped us survive. And I really thought of me and myself and my own upbringing and my childhood. And as someone who has spent years working with children who had experienced profound trauma, and later with adults carrying a lot of developmental and relational wounds, I found NARM incredibly hopeful. You know, that beneath symptoms and coping strategies, I kept seeing like what's alive in people, like what is alive in them, what, despite everything, what wants connection and creativity and authenticity. So NARM kind of gave me language for something that I was sensing for a long time. And, you know, in Spanish, there's a word corazonada, which means heartfelt. Like there was a heartfelt feeling, like an intuition that I was on the right track. And I was drawn like to the present-centered focusedness that histories are important, of course, and histories matter. But for me, NARM was like more interested in who we are right now. It wasn't only focused on the wound, but also it was like a curiosity about what remains alive and intact within us. So I felt like it was practical and there was like this expansiveness in me. But I couldn't train at the time. And I'm talking about like 2013, 2014. And as I was reflecting on it, I said, wow, time flies, because I had joined the inner circle, I think around 2013 or 2014. I stayed connected to the work, but then I deviated to do other things. And it took 10 years, you know. So I deviated, did other trainings, you know, EMDR, internal family system, with some friends that were really interested in us bringing IFS to the Latino community. And I wanted to support that. And I feel like it's really interesting. I feel like IFS brought me back to NARM. Yeah. And then eventually I said, okay, NARM kept on calling me. And I took the basic training because I wanted to meet other people that were from diverse settings, you know, interested in NARM.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, this feels like home. Like it felt really good. And you know, what was interesting was like, I met so many incredible people in the basic training, from like technology to from everywhere.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Cool? Yeah.
I thought it was the
cool.
coolest thing.
It really is.
I met so many young guys that were in technology, interested in themselves. And
so cool.
The basic training supported the Corazonada, that internal heartfelt intuition in my body and my heart. And I said, oh, I'm going to continue. And I mapped it out because, you know, there's a lot of things that you have to do, you know, consultation, you know, group supervision, active coaching. And I really appreciated that NARM lets you know, this is what you got to do. This is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
We're not going to surprise you. Here it is right now.
Yep.
but I appreciated it because I learned so much. And yeah, I just learned so much about myself. And so what continued to inspire me about NARM is that it really helps you to reconnect to yourself.
Yeah.
And to reconnect in a way that is so compassionate. At least for me, I develop a deeper compassion for myself. So now I'm in the master and I could see myself differently in active coaching. Like I could be so honest and vulnerable. I'm like, wow. It just so deeply resonates with all that I am. Therapist, teacher, writer, dreamer, artist, it's a heartful model that trusts that beneath all our survival strategies, there's something in us always looking towards light, towards connection, towards what's alive, to become fully ourselves.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's one of my favorite questions that I always want to ask people is like, what drew you to this model? And so often there's, some kind of universal pieces that I think all of us feel that you named of like, we can bring all these aspects of ourselves and there's something really connecting and beautiful about that. How we can show up in community and learn together. And this Corazonada, is that how you say
Corazonada,
it? Corazonada. What a beautiful, I want to go, I don't know, I want to do some research on that word. And there's so much richness there, I can tell, but really beautiful. Well, yeah. So thank you for sharing with us what brought you to the model. So now I'm curious, can I ask kind of how are you bringing in all of these? Because again, you have so much rich background. Like, how are you bringing this all together? What is it, that feels like that golden thread for you in terms of your work and how you're bringing NARM in?
Yeah, I think that for me, this is interesting, Emily. In the past, along with my friends, when we're studying this or sensory motor that, or we're doing a lot of things. And I feel like for me, this time going into the basic training and going into NARM, it was like just staying focused on NARM. As much as I love everything I've done, and as much as I feel that everything I have done has led me to here, even if I've deviated from time to time. And so for me, I think I'm trying to think if there's a golden thread, but for me is staying very focused on being in the NARM community, learning NARM, and I integrate NARM in everything I do. Like it happens like organically. Like I'll be reading something and I'll write about it from a NARM perspective. And so that NARM is not just what I do in therapy. My practice is very small because I work full-time and my full-time job is my priority. So NARM kind of enhances what I do in my part-time practice. But what I've learned is that NARM has become part of how I see things. So if I'm reading something on Frankenstein, I have a Substack, and so I'm in the Dominican writer community, so I might be involved with what they're doing. So if they're reading Frankenstein in Spanish, I'm reading it in English or in Spanish with them, right? So I noticed that I was looking at Frankenstein from a NARM perspective, and that I also was looking at it from a grief perspective and how we connect and disconnect from ourselves. And so I think that if anything, that thread, I hope I'm answering your question.
Yes.
Like that thread, I could be in any experience and suddenly I'm reflecting. So I do a lot of writing. Like I do a lot of little essays for myself. Sometimes I might post them in Substack. Sometimes I don't. But I also do lots of little collage postcards of concepts or issues. I'll take a little concept of NARM and create a little collage about it. So I noticed that I'm doing that more and more, that I'm incorporating it. Oh, I'll see a movie and I'll see it from a NARM perspective.
Yeah.
I'll write about it.
Yeah. I love it. Now I'm really curious. I'm I want to see these postcards and I want to go see a movie with you and have a NARM discussion after.
Absolutely. Because I felt like in the past, I might be doing a particular theory and learning it and then doing something else at the same time. And I felt this time it would be great to just focus on one thing. And I have clients that come for a lot of different reasons. And some clients are there for more supportive work, and later on they might need a little bit more. So I know that for me, what I've learned is, like even on my website, I said, I know that you're coming here to check me out or to check this out. So not everybody's going to come for long-term therapy. So I kind of have like a whole little explanation that it's okay to come to me for a consultation, to come to me for supportive work, to reflect on something, or to come for me for longer term.
Well, I love that. I mean, even in that, there's kind of the NARM way of approaching it, of like we're meeting them where they are and and giving them agency around what it is that they're actually wanting. I mean, even that, right?
Yeah. That's really good. Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious, I'm just thinking about the 10 more questions that I want to ask you, but I want to check in with you around like, what is it that is there anything else you'd like to share with our community in terms of the work that you're doing and that you would like folks to know is out there and happening? You have a Substack. I mean, there's lots of things that you're doing.
Yeah. The work that I'm doing primarily. So, I told you that a while back, I was in a fellowship through Internal Family System. And my fellowship the focus of my work was to bring internal family system into the community. And I created this whole program called Insight, which became my Substack, actually. And in my Insight on Substack, I said what I wanted to write, but it always comes back to NARM. And I'm like, oh my God, I said I was going to write about dreams, or I was going to write about writing, but I find myself writing about NARM. Yeah. So this year, my Substack, which is Insight, which is my creative practice, is where I do dream circles on Sunday once a month. And I'm part of a Jungian Life Dream School, and we're doing a red book. And it's a lot of fun, all of that. And so Insight is the place where, you could come to me for therapy, of course, but you could also come to me for some of my expressive workshops. But because I'm limited in time, I have these groups that are like close because they're been together for a while, and I'm trying to open new dream groups. And I also do some writing groups on through Amherst Writers and Artists Model, which is a very sensitive, compassionate model of writing with others, writing alone and with others. That's the book. Written by Pat Schneider. And I've been involved with them since like 2007. It's not new, but the last workshop that I did with them was, taking our dreams and creating stories from them. Because I feel like dreams are so rich in poetry and stories, So I feel like I needed to put everything in one place, and all these parts of me in one place, and it became Insight. And later on, it became Substack, which was last year. I was in Substack like for 3 years, and I wouldn't post anything. And then through NARM, of course, and through a lot of working in community, I reflected one day on wanting to do the Substack, and I did it.
Great. I love it. I love it. Well, before we close, I would love to hear, do you have any experiences or stories, NARMy stories that you could share with us?
So I teach social work at Touro Graduate School of Social Work, and I teach clinical practice. I'm in the practice area. And I'm a course lead in that area, meaning, in the past, I was like the vice chair of that practice sequence. And what I teach is individual practice, which is theory. And then in the second semester, which is the spring, I teach couples and family therapy, again, theory. And I also created a course on existential humanistic perspective. And also I inherited a course somebody gave me on arts intervention and social work practice. So for the past 10 years, I've been teaching, or more, I've been teaching this course on incorporating the arts, the expressive arts, writing, poetry, movement into social work practice. And I have to say, it's amazing. The experiences of teaching those courses. So so that's my full-time job. And yes, of course, if you're a professor, you're going to do a lot of administrative work. So I do advise students, I mentor faculty, we do research, we write. There's a lot of things that we do. And then my private practice, and then my creative practice is kind of merged with my psychotherapy practice. But but it's also a little separate because my clients don't go to my dream circle. My dream circle
Sure.
are different people.
Sure.
But if anything, I feel that what I find, how you talk to me, how you ask me about that thread, Emily, I find that even when I'm not thinking about it, I'm talking about NARM. Like I'll bring it in, Of
Yeah.
course, NARM is not in the textbooks yet, right? But I find myself, because the students will ask about other theories that are out there and they're curious, or some insight happened and I need to share about NARM in the book or something that I've learned. And so NARM does integrate itself into my educational practice, and the students are fascinated. And so I always say, if you're ever curious, a basic training is a great, place to start, just like I did.
Yeah, there's just so many layers. I helped, I was assisting in the, I guess back then they called it the OBT, the online basics training. Now it's NARM basics training, I believe. And I loved that training because of exactly what you named. There's such a diverse group of people. There's dentists, there's volleyball coaches, there's like all kinds of people integrating this NARM way of life into their practice. And I just find it so beautiful. So I love that you named that.
And I love what you just said, Emily, incorporating NARM in life, I love that. Embodying it. Yeah, I love how you said that.
Gosh, Annecy, I just so appreciate you taking the time. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our community before we move to close?
No, I really appreciate, Emily, being here with you and the listeners. It's so beautiful to reflect on our lives in this way and how we came to NARM. I really do. When I was a Zen practitioner, I'm still a Zen practitioner, and then my late teacher, she would do these way talks about how we came to Zen. And as I was reflecting about being here with you today, memories of her came to me. Something that she taught us when we would sit in meditation, that sitting in Zazen was a way to come to ourselves. And I feel that NARM reflects that. Like there's like a lot of what I learned in Zen Buddhism that I see some parallels sometimes in NARM. And so to be here sharing in conversation with you, how I came to NARM and how I came to all the work that I'm doing. Yeah, it was beautiful to be in conversation with you.
Thank you. I feel so much the same and so lucky and fortunate that we have you in our community. And so for anyone who would kind of like to find out about all those things that you offer, how can folks get in touch with you?
I'm on Substack.
Okay.
At Insight, INKSITE, of course. And I'm also, my link tree, which is available, has everything on it, including some of my stories. My link tree is Annecy Báez is my name.
Okay.
Just that. Link tree and then Annecy Báez.
Okay. Fantastic. We'll put that in the show notes so folks can get it.
Yes,
and also, I happen to know because I did it, but I just Googled your name and you popped right up. You have such a beautiful, unique name that folks you're easily Googleable.
Oh yes, I'm easily Googleable.
So they will find your link tree even if we didn't give them that information.
It's so true.
Folks can track you down and be in touch with you about all the beautiful things that you're doing, your artwork and all your creative stuff. So again, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate being here. When I think about kind of a closing reflection, I feel like what I want to leave listeners with, and I shared what I wanted listeners to take with them. But as I'm leaving, I want them to take one thing, that healing is not about perfection, but more about reconnection. And I think that, reconnecting to our bodies, to our imagination, to our creativity, to our community, to parts of us that we may have set aside, and I really feel that that's like the heart of transforming trauma, like discovering that underneath all our survival strategies, that there's always this part of us that is always moving towards, greater authenticity, connection to light, to life. And so I want to thank you and the listeners today.
Thank you, Annecy. I feel so touched.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode. To find more information about our guest, check the show notes or visit us at complextraumatrainingcenter.com/transforming trauma. As a mental health professional, your commitment to healing and growth inspires us. We at the Complex Trauma Training Center are committed to supporting you in your well-being and success. That's why we're honored to invite you to our Space Program 2026, an inner development program of support and self-discovery for therapists on the personal, interpersonal, and transpersonal levels. Please visit complextraumatrainingcenter.com and secure your spot in the 2026 Space Program.